Hello again, everybody. It's Scott. I am on Bodies in Motion, and I'm going to go through what's new on the site. So we have some new motions, new artwork. I will review the challenge from last episode, and then I will do a little anatomy lecture kind of based on the drawing that I did for the challenge from last episode. And then we'll end with another challenge to give you guys something to draw in between episodes. Okay, so starting off, you can see that I'm already on the browse page. We have on the, I'm sorting by newest, and there are 6 new ballet motions. Okay, these are quite isolated, quite simple motions, so really good for gesture studies, balance studies. Um, Not crazy as far as the difficulty level. So study a number of the poses, the weight balance, the transfer. Um, Really nice, I think, really nice things to work on that aren't too challenging. No extreme foreshortening or backflips coming towards the camera, that sort of thing. Okay, so 6 new motions there. Also, one thing to note, these are multicam motions. So you can see it's keyworded multicam. And so if I just quickly click through to that, you can see actually the keyword, when you click multicam, you get all of the multicam motions, right? So we have pages of these, and clicking through on, say, one of the ballet motions, you can see this is a 2-camera motion. And so two angles of the same pose, right? So really good if you are trying to block something in 3D, or just even trying to understand a little bit more of about the form or the gesture, right? The balance sometimes is very useful to be able to move around, even if it's limited to just a single another camera view. Okay, so that's what we have for multicam. Let me just get back, and I'll just go back to newest here. So the 6 ballet motions, a number of free run motions, so kind of parkour motions. These are flips off of an elevated platform. Um, different variations, different models actually as well. So some good study, and all of these actually are also multicam. In this instance, 3 cameras. Okay, so lots to look through there. And then finally, we have about 5 new Hapkido motions. So some really kind of, I guess these would categorize as more challenging, right? Because there's 2 figures interacting, a bunch of cloth deforming as well. So lots to study here. Again, also looking at what's happening now, yeah, not the most pleasant, but some interesting kind of techniques as well. I mean, kind of quite dangerous from our Hapkido master, who's a 5th degree black belt, actually, so quite accomplished. Okay, so that's it. There's a couple new Hapkido motions on the second page, but I won't go into those. Okay, so let me first, before we go to review the challenge from last week, I'm going to look at the latest editor's choice from the artwork section. Okay, and this is just one of my favorite things to review. So I think we are about here from last week. Maybe there's even a couple more. Let me just see. Yeah, so if anybody was here on the last episode, this is where we left off. I loved these. And since then, we have a few new, well, quite a few new studies. Some great head studies from Michael Hampton. And then Jem has some amazing little GIFs. You guys should check that out and click through and see all of her related artworks at the bottom. This I'm going to open in a new tab because this is one of my favorites, and we will look at that again in a second. Love it, and I'll show that again. And then kind of from top to bottom, I guess, on the first page of Editor's Choice. Here's another one from Jem. This is quite impressive as well, kind of a tonal study that's animated as well from Red Karatz, username Red Karatz. So check that out. Really cool. I mean, this is great to see. I mean, there's, from an artistic standpoint, from kind of a learning standpoint, this type of exercise. I'm going to click through just to look at this. This is super challenging to start with, right? Because you have to get consistency in kind of your figure through all the frames. But let's see, I think that's the full size. I don't think we can zoom in. You have to get consistency in the figure through all the frames. So it's very challenging. But as soon as you're doing more than just an outline drawing and you're starting to investigate the halftones, right? That's when you start to learn a lot about the internal structure of the body, right? This is when you work like this, when you study like this, you're starting to learn sculptural form, right? And people who know me know that I draw all the time, but I'm a sculptor, a digital sculptor, and I firmly believe the value of drawing to enhance and better your sculpture. Because literally doing the halftones, studying the halftones on something like this from multiple camera angles will translate directly into your sculptural knowledge. Okay, so super, super valuable, super challenging, but I would love to see more of these. If anybody has the guts to do it and upload it, I would love to see it. Okay, so honorable mention to Red Karatz for that. Beautiful kind of GIF. Okay, Jonathan is back with some more amazing kind of halftone studies. Love this. I mean, these are all like Michelangelo-esque kind of pieces. This is one of mine. I put it in editor's choice because, well, I can. So I made it into editor's choice selection. Amazing. But this is from the capoeira motion. Again, really a lot of good form to study, and also some interesting cloth folds to see move. Okay, similar studies, or studies from the same motion, I believe, from Camilo. And these look great. Taekwondo GIF from Matt Maka, amazing, love it. And a couple gesture studies from a user named Damani, and these are really good. You should look through these. These are from the parkour motion. So I think this is a combined sequence, part 1 and part 2 of a flip. This, by the way, is the upload for this is another one of mine. This is my upload for the challenge. So I'll go through this in a little bit more detail in a second. Jonathan Tone studies and some amazing GIFs, some amazing animations from Tom Gately. Just kind of a master class in kind of gesture animations. Check those out when you have a minute. In fact, check out all of Tom Gately's stuff. For those of you who haven't seen it, by the way, on Tom Gately, there's an interview with him in the blog section where he talks about learning animation, working his way through Disney and his time at Pixar, and techniques, how he studies, how he practices, a number of really, really useful things. So definitely check out that in the blog section. Okay, and then this is just an amazing, fantastical piece, borrowing anatomy from one of the motions, right? So just really taking the shading and the volumes and then throwing imagination on top of it. I'd love to see that. Okay, so great work, everybody, and to everybody in not editor's choice, also amazing work. You know, you see a lot more studies in here that didn't quite get filtered into the top, but you know, just tremendous effort. So keep all of these coming. I love to see them. And yeah, I acknowledge and I look through every single one. So if you're studying, do upload and share with the community. It's great to see. Okay, so I guess since I'm here, so I'm at the end of this section, I have to give kind of the best of the episode award to this piece, which is Donatello. And the artist, I know him on Instagram, but I don't have his name here in his profile. So I will link to his Instagram in the show notes below the video. Okay, so you guys can click through and see some other amazing artwork from him. But this is Donatello Mutant Ninja Turtle with some reference from the not nom motion. So a lot of the staff studies, right? This is, again, beautiful, beautifully lit work on the staff, but also some great poses. And specifically, this references the very last pose in the motion, which is this what you see on screen. So this wins Best of Episode Artwork, 100%. I saw this and I was floored. Imagine creative use of the reference, imagination, color, watercolors, technique, beautiful. So amazing, great work. Okay, now let's review the artwork from the challenge from last week. So this was the motion, Asian Dance 2, and I will just search it, and this is the result. Let me just click through. And for those of you who weren't here last episode, let me just play this. Some really nice gestures and arcs to the motion. Some pretty good form lighting as well, so you can kind of pick out a lot of anatomy as she moves through the poses. Okay, so like anything on the site, when you upload artwork, it's linked to the motion that you studied from. Okay, and so the challenge was to do some drawing from that reference and then to upload it down here. And you can see we had pretty good uptake on the challenge. First one already existed, so this is beta artwork from Con Muftik, and then the rest were uploaded. And let's look at these individually. I've opened these in their own tabs so we can see those. So this was Khan's, and you can see on his just amazing kind of focus on the gesture primarily. He has form described. He hasn't gone too deep into the halftones, but he's really focused on the arcs carved out by the motion, right? Frame to frame, and that's kind of the beauty of having the sequences, right, in Bodies in Motion, is that you can see the translation or the rotation of an arm or a leg through a motion. And so if you're going for gesture, you can understand the gesture in that you know where it came from, right? Which is super important if you're trying to accentuate it or try to capture the essence of it. Okay, so amazing stuff from Khan. He's got another piece, another beta piece uploaded as well, which is worth checking out. This is a kind of, I guess, a tone study, a little bit of a half-tone study by Ahmed. And he's got in and done a reasonably good job of working through some of the complicated anatomy of the back. A few areas where I think there's a little confusion, like this shoulder, for example, is probably doesn't describe exactly what's going on. And I'll open some of the images and we can look at this in the little bit of anatomy review. Okay, but overall, really nice, nicely executed studies. Ahmed also uploaded this GIF, which I need to do a hard refresh on because it doesn't loop. So I think Ahmed, there's something in your GIF that doesn't loop. So there it is, guys and girls. As quick as that, 16 frames in and out. It looked good for the moment I saw it, but I think there's something technically wrong with the GIF. Because alternately, this is one that loops, and this is really cool. This is Red Karatz. We saw him in the artwork section. Really cool study from, again, gestures just like, pieced together. What does he say? 1 minute per frame on Procreate, 20 frames. Beautiful. You see, you can almost feel the side of the pencil effect of the technique. And look, I almost got these synced. I think he's a little faster than our GIF, but the only criticism I would have is the really thick ankles on this piece. I think you've kind of missed a little magic by making her have elephant feet, and with just a little tweak, it could have been really elegant legs on her. to accentuate the motion in the lines. But very, very good. I love it. This one gets a special mention. And I think I'm going to have to award the prize for most compelling artwork to Nettie, right? And this is, unfortunately, Nettie, there is no tangible prize other than pride right now. In the future, we'll build up challenges and there will be an actual tangible reward. But for this one, it's just pride. But just on his technique, reading through his notes, ZBrush 3D, I think what he says is he transposed this in ZBrush. And for people not familiar with ZBrush, it's a 3D sculpting program and is not an animation program. So I know personally, because I use ZBrush a lot, how much effort it is to take a digital sculpture and using the tools in that program to make it into a compelling animation. So huge effort to do this, beyond just drawing 16 frames or whatever he drew. What did he do? 16 poses. It's quite a bit of effort to do this and keep it kind of moving and deforming well. Okay, so well done, Nettie. You win the award for effort and great GIF for this last challenge. Okay, a couple more just to round this off. This is Milos Tudis submitted this. Again, this could almost be, there's this one and there's this one, and they together, if you wanted Milos, you could cut those out and somehow put them together in Photoshop to just make a GIF, and that would actually probably move pretty well, since I think you've got all the frames. So that might be something to consider. Sorry, one more. We have this one, which is a pretty nice tone study. I think there's probably a few anatomical inaccuracies on this shoulder that make it read a little bit awkward, right? Otherwise, the tones are good, right? It's pretty well observed, but I think some of the form in here lets it down. Okay, and this is mine. This was the one that I just looked at before, and this was kind of me working through the poses. I started with some really quick. This is the timer, the animation timer on 30 seconds, and you can see that I didn't actually get very far with these first couple in 30 seconds. So pretty poor effort on my part. But I was like, I don't know. It was just, I was kind of playing around to see how far I could get with just a stick figure, a little ball for a head, and then a similar hairdo, actually. And then these are a little bit longer studies. I don't think I had the timer on. But certainly, from the process of me working through this, there were a number of points, a number of areas as I was stepping through the motion that I said, there's some really interesting anatomy that I need to point out to people when we do the review video, which is where we're at right now. So I'm going to flip over to Drawing Program, and I'll bring this in, and I'm going to point out a couple of those places, and then also I'll review a couple of the areas that were problematic for other people who did the challenge. Okay, so just give me a second. I will be right back. Okay, here we are. That actually didn't take very long to do. In fact, it was instantaneous probably for you guys. Okay, I'm going to leave off these guys. I'm not going to look at any of those because I don't think there's much useful that I accomplished up there. These have a little bit more observation put into them. And the thing I guess I wanted to start with was what happens in the forearms, well, specifically the elbow, right? The transition between upper arm to lower arm. And quite prominent in a lot of these poses were something called the epicondyles, right? There's these bony points on the humerus. So humerus is the bone coming down the upper arm bone, socket in there in the shoulder, and then it flares out at the elbow to two bony points. Kind of a medial, one towards the middle of the body, midline of the body, and lateral, one away from the midline of the body. Now these are what I call bony landmarks. They are places that are reliably found underneath the skin, meaning they're not covered with muscle, and so you can reliably find them on the surface. And muscles attach onto them, right? So they will guide you in your quest to get the anatomy blocked in correctly, right? And in this particular pose, because her arms are flapping all over the place, you get to see the elbow from a number of views, and so you get to see how these two landmarks create surface form and how they interact with the muscles around them. Okay, and one of the interesting things is on at least the medial side is this creates a nice little bump, especially on a thin arm, right? This is your funny bone, by the way. It's funny when you hit it on something, or when somebody else sees you hit it on something. Maybe not funny for you. And so this is always generally a convexity, right? A little bump on the arm. On an extended arm, the lateral epicondyle ends up being in a depression, right? Because you have muscles that flow around it. And in particular, we have some forearm muscles that come off the humerus above. And then we have extensor muscles for our wrist and fingers that come off below, right? And so you get this kind of network of muscles above and below that give a nice depression for this landmark to sit in, right? In fact, this mass that I'm drawing right now, this extensor mass, eventually, over time, we will subdivide this into its individual extensors, but for now, we'll just consider it one common mass. All these muscles anchor to this landmark, this epicondyle, and then they extend the wrist and the fingers this way. Okay, so that's the lateral epicondyle on a straight arm. The medial epicondyle is still sitting in here, and it's still funny if it gets bumped, right? Still like that. And then the other component that we need to talk about on the elbow is this part of the ulna, right? So you have two bones in the forearm. For those of you who don't know, there's something called the radius and something called the ulna, right? And the ulna is the thing that makes your elbow bone as you know it. If you're going to elbow somebody because you're angry with them, you do that with the head of the ulna, right? And the radius actually is kind of the complement of that, and is actually more or less buried at the elbow. But by the time it gets to the wrist, it's on the thumb side. So if this is a thumb, a really bad thumb, this is the pinky out here. Okay, these are three other fingers. I'm going to put nails on there just so it's even worse. So radius to the thumb side and ulna to the pinky side, right? Radius is big at the wrist, small at the top. Ulna is big at the top, elbow side, and small at the wrist. Okay, so those are the two forearm bones. Okay, now back to where we were. On the straight arm, with these epicondyles in place, the ulna magically is in line with them, right? So on a straight arm, you get this nice access through these three landmarks: epicondyle, ulna, epicondyle. Okay, this, by the way, I'm making this little round thing at the wrist. That also is a landmark. That's what would be called the styloid process of the ulna. Okay, on the pinky side, remember, And that's the little bony bump that you can feel on your hand, right? So just, well, on your wrist. Okay, and so you can actually find this transition all the way up to your elbow. Now, I'm mentioning this little straight line because there is some magic that happens when you bend your elbow, right? The ulna slides around, kind of hooks around an interesting little mechanism, which we don't have time to talk about, but essentially it's like a, it's like a hinge, and in the same color, the ulna now is here, going down to the wrist, and the epicondyles are here and here. And you can see they're no longer in this axis, right? They're now doing something magic. They're making a little triangle shape, okay? And this is the back view of the arm, right? So really, effectively, because of the way the ulna rotated out, the upper arm is maybe 1.5 centimeters longer than it was when it was straight, because of the way this kind of hinge rotates around and lowers the ulna, right? So triangle on a bent elbow and aligned on a straight elbow. Okay, now I'm going to bring in the images, kind of some of the photos to show this exact thing, so you don't have to take my word for it that I drew it correctly, but I will bring in the images and you can see quickly on those. Okay, that's a good selection of these, and let me just quickly point out what I've explained over in the drawing. So first, look at this triangle. I'm not joking about this. Epicondyle. Actually, we do epicondyle lateral, epicondyle medial, just like we're looking at here. And this is the bony point of the ulna. Here's, by the way, the styloid process. So the ulna is actually going around like that. Okay, and literally, that's that. Okay, that's the triangle. Right. Now, what else? Okay, well, I've pasted in all these images so that I can just point these out. When you're thinking about this area, right? Okay, we can't see the lateral epicondyle here because this actually is muscle. I don't know if I have a convention. I think I'll do the muscle in blue. This is the muscle that I outlined previously. That's the same as this, right? It kind of hooks over, right? And it has a name, right? Well, it's two muscles actually. I don't know if I want to say all these names in these videos, but it's extensor carpi radialis longus and brachioradialis. Those are the two. Collectively, I refer to those as ridge muscles because they come off of this ridge in the humerus, right, going up from the epicondyle. But don't worry about the names right now. Just fundamentally, those are the things that wrap over top of the lateral epicondyle. So out of view here, out of view here because of that muscle. But the landmark on the inside is what's creating this transition, right? If I zoom in a little bit so you guys can see better. You see this nice plane and then bam, funny bone and then muscle, right? So this is upper arm, tricep, etc. And then this transition is the bony part of the humerus, okay? And then you're down into forearm muscles. Because actually, in the same way that I had extensor muscles over here coming off the lateral epicondyle, I'm telling you right now, off the medial epicondyle comes flexor muscles that flex the wrist and fingers. Okay, so that's what, it's a simple thing, but when you're drawing a straight arm, that's the transition that you look for in the upper arm. Okay, this view, this is a good example of the alignment of all these landmarks vertically. Lateral epicondyle, medial, just out of view, and the ulna here going down like that, okay? So that's what we're looking at. And again, so it's both the alignment of these, but also that they're in this depression, right? That is a depression on the straight arm, elevation on the bent arm. And again, triangle, right? This elbow is bent. That's a triangle. This is a little bit longer than it was previously. Okay, I think there's just so much great stuff to talk about, right? I could go on endlessly. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in a quick screenshot of that problem area of the shoulder that we saw in the artwork, and I'll just talk about that for a second because this is it right here. And then we will wrap up this little anatomy lecture. Okay, so just 1 second. Okay, I've just pasted in the image that we looked at in the artwork section that has a little bit of a problem. And I'm just going to outline for you on this image, well, before I outline the landmarks here, the problem arises in this part of the shoulder, right? This big depression here is not correct. And this is one of the problems, which this is why I teach anatomy, so that you can use your knowledge to disambiguate problems with reference, right? And in this particular pose, this strand of hair is going over a critical transition in the shoulder, right? And he's left the hair out, and in exchange for what's going down here, he's made this depression longer. But in reality, this bony depression is like this. And then we kind of have a couple of landmarks, which hopefully we'll address sometime in the future, going down like this. So that is a bony landmark in the shoulder. It's part of the scapula. And the muscle then comes off like this, right? It has some shadows on it because of hair and just lighting. But essentially, this entire thing is a depression, right? And that's the shape of it. It's always a rectangle. This is a bony part of the shoulder called the acromion. I might have mentioned this before in some of the earlier videos, but it's always a rectangular shape, right? And a little bit longer front and back than it is wide, okay? And the problem here again is that his interpretation of that is this shape, right? And that's way too big. That won't work. And the knock-on effect is that the deltoid ends up being really short in this dimension. And if this person in the drawing straightened their arm, they'd have this crest coming out like that, this crest of bone coming out like that, which would cause other functional problems, I'm sure. At the very least, like fitting into, shoulder pads in a suit or something. Okay, so I think, and by the way, just because we're here, you can also see this acromion. I tell you guys so much. All these little secrets is right here as well. Okay, that is it for the anatomy lecture. If you guys enjoy this and you think this is interesting, leave a comment down below. I do these because this is really what my interest is, and there's so much to discover and learn in these motions. I've just touched on a tiny fraction of all the stuff that you could study on even just this one sequence. So there we could go on forever and ever. And that's the great thing about anatomy, is that it's quite a deep topic visually for artists. And the more you understand, the more you can start to notice it creeping into your work. And hopefully over time it becomes spontaneous and just informs how you work, draw or sculpt or whatever your medium. Okay, so that is all for the anatomy lecture. Okay, we are near the end of this episode, and the last thing I'm going to do is leave you with a challenge for next time. And what I want you to do in your spare time or during your drawing study sessions this week and the next week is to work on a comic book challenge, if you choose to. What I put together in a collection on the site is a number of frames that are amazing, kind of dynamic poses that I think would suit a comic superhero. Now, you can choose whichever comic superhero or villain you want, but the idea is to modify or augment any of these poses. So use this as reference for your drawing or your painting or whatever, and just kind of go crazy with comic book imagination, right? And you don't have to be a comic book artist, obviously. This is meant to be a fun challenge to just kind of take you out of just drawing exactly what you see into something with a layer of imagination over top, a bit like the Donatello, right? Mutant Ninja Turtle. Doesn't have to be a Mutant Ninja Turtle, mind you. But these are the poses, so you could pick any of these. By the way, collections are only available to subscribers, right? So people who are subscribed will have access to this collection specifically. If you're not subscribed, you can still work on the challenge. And what I think is for people who aren't subscribers to the site, the motion that you should work with is one of the frames from Male Dance James 1. Okay, and I'll just click through to this and you can see this motion. So to get to it, again, it's Male Dance. If I could type, that would help. James 1. Two versions. This one is actually contrasted just for big shadow shapes, right? So if you just want some really contrasty reference, you can look at that. But I'll show you this motion. And this is great to study from. If you're not registered, you'll get this at preview resolution, which is possibly adequate. But there's great dynamic poses here, like coming down especially. Like some of these are great. And this is a multicam motion. So there's 3 views, each one of them like equally amazing on a couple of these poses, right? So it's really, I think this is where kind of being a subscriber is useful, because a lot of these have great detail in the high res, or useful detail anyways. You can see actually the studio that I shot this in, kind of the third camera view is always compromised, shooting out of the cove. So it's not beautiful, but the form is still there. Okay, so some great, I mean, amazing dynamic pose. This guy was crazy. And so that's it. Use Male Dance James #1. If you aren't a subscriber, or even if you are, you can reference this. And if this doesn't float your boat, grab something else from the Comic Challenge collection and upload it. So do your best and upload it. Again, you do not have to be a subscriber to upload artwork. You just have to be registered. So if I sign out, if you're just registered, then you can post artwork. And it will go up with your name and, well, however much information you want to share in your profile. But that's enough. So you don't have to pay. You can if you want, but you don't have to participate. Okay, so guys and gals, that is it for this episode. I hope to do these frequently, and the more artwork gets uploaded, the more frequently I will do these. Also, a little bit depending on my time. I want to do them weekly. It may end up being every 10 days, or it might be every 2 weeks, but I will do more. So yeah, subscribe and share, and hopefully leave notes if you found the anatomy stuff valuable. All right, all for now. Thanks.